Hello, everyone, and welcome to Twillow Talk. I'm Tanis Coughlin. Who am I today? I am Tanis Coughlin from the Twillow Lifestyle Community, Twillow Lifestyle Academy. I am joined by my co-host, Jennifer Tchaikovsky.
Hello, hello.
And we are honored to have Susan Stark Christianson with us today. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you so much.
It's awesome to have you. And so we have some people to say hello to already who are on. We have Hypnocity.
Hello, hello.
Hey, Melanie. Welcome. And we have Fogo Pogo. So, hey, Kaylee.
Hey.
Great to have you. Thank you so much for joining us. And let's look at, we also have Living in Radiance. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Thanks for coming. Yes, the energies are a little crazy. We're going to look a little bit at that, but I think that a lot of it is downloads that are coming in. So, we did have a crazy day last Thursday where stuff was a little nuts in terms of the Schumann. I was looking to find a picture of that, but I don't seem to see one. This is today. So we are at 22 today on our Schumann, which is pretty high. Not like our 130 that we had a little while ago, but as you can see, there's a fair bit of white coming in here. So that does create that sort of, those symptoms that we often have, right? And then if we look for solar flares, they're pretty quiet. So that's why that's a little bit interesting today. We've got sort of high Schumann, a little bit higher because your standard is 7.8 hertz, right? So we are elevated in the Schumann, but I think that everybody's feeling a lot more than just that. So there's a lot of downloads coming in right now. What's coming in with the neutrinos?
Those
new transits. It's a new word for me, guys.
Yes. On the 1st, we transitioned into the 63rd gate. And so the 63rd gate is the gate it's after completion. It's the gate of doubt. And so the energy here is about moving from the shadow of doubt to the siddhi, or the enlightened state of truth, through the gift of equality. And so we look at that and go, okay, what does that mean, right? And so the path of inquiry takes us through this kind of contemplation of doubt and what doubt actually is and how it shows up for us in our experience. And so Richard talks about how this gate is fundamentally about stimulation of the mind and how that can take us in different directions, right? And it can take us into that place of doubt and worry and fear and all of that. Or it can bring us into a place of deeper understanding and truth, depending on how we're navigating it, right? And so this shadow for the 63rd gate manifests as doubt. And the victim aspect of that is associated with either self-doubt or suspicion. And so that can show up in both ways, or one or the other, depending on what it is we're dealing with in our experience. And the deep, deep pressure here, because this is a mental pressure, right? That deep pressure that comes in is for the mind to try to understand the energy. And when we don't understand it, we move into this place where there's a lack of trust. And so we're trying really hard to find logical solutions to figure it out. And, as we all know, and we've talked about it so much on the show, the mind is not meant to be our decision maker. The mind is not meant to figure it all out all of the time. And when the mind doesn't have the capacity to figure it out, the mind makes up stories. It's what the mind does because it doesn't like to be uncomfortable. And so we get into this cycle of skepticism and disbelief, and we come to a place where trust is really hard. Right? Trusting ourselves, trusting others, trusting the universe, it becomes more difficult. And so the challenge here is to recognize when that doubt comes in, right? And what that doubt is doing. Is it paralyzing me? Is it making me operate from fear? Is it making me act out because I'm feeling a certain way? And as we begin to notice it, we can start to transmute it. right? And in that, we can transition from doubt into the joy here, which is equality.
Oh, that was weird. Okay, sorry. You had a weird sound come across your mic. I was like,
I don't know.
I don't know. Interesting. You got visitors there again, or
maybe they're just saying yes. Let's transmute. So we want to process this doubt and move it into, again, this place of equality. So you know how I always say, like, open and curious, right? And open and curious is such a beautiful place to be, because when we're open and curious, we are able to experience things in a different way. And here, we talk about equality, and I know that equality is a big thing in the world right now that we're talking about, and it's such an important piece. But we need to come to a place of equality within ourselves, where we balance within ourselves all of the different aspects of who we are. And then we're able to bring that forward into the world. And so here, when we're talking about equality, if you're an activist and that's what you do and you go out and you push that, by all means, but still take the time to step back and go, what is it in myself that I am negating? What is it that I'm denying? What is it that I don't want to look at or I don't want to give any attention to? Because those are the areas that we have to look at in order to be able to transmute this energy. That's what's going to move us through this place of uncertainty, because if we can embrace all aspects of who we are, now we have the ability to bring that out into the world, right? So this is a big piece of the energy that we're going to be in from now until the 7th, and then we're going to transition again, as we always do. But notice that this is the yoga path of inquiry. It's really about, how do we know the truth that is available to us, and how do we open to that? We talk about downloads, we talk about all of those things. The only way that we're going to be able to get that information in and integrate it is to get out of our heads, to make space for that to come through. So this state transcends the need for answers by embracing the unknown, allowing that peace to settle in with inner certainty that we're going to be able to move through the energy, and that what we need to know will come in when we need it. It's a very different way of navigating the mental pressure that shows up.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Susan, what have you been feeling?
Well, thank you guys so much for sharing that. I 100% totally agree. I think the challenges of this time are to be able to go inward and to understand what's in our hearts, not what is showing up in our minds, but really to do that inner journey. In Native teachings, one of the traditional teachings is that the longest journey is the journey from the head to the heart. And so it's that inner journey, that heart space, that really gives us the opportunity to know on a greater level. And that's what we're being called to do, of our own knowing, not someone else's, but our own knowing in this time. So thank you both for sharing that. That's really, really profound.
Beautiful. Thank you. And why don't you tell people a little bit about what you do, Susan, so that they can understand where you're coming from?
Get to know you a bit.
I don't know what I do. Well, I'll introduce myself, how I normally do. I always say I have 3 names. My English name, of course, is Susan, and I have a Hebrew name, which is Sarah, which means princess. And I also have a Tlingit name, which was given to me by the elder who adopted me, Jim Walton, whose Tlingit name is Kla'a, and he was Kagwantan Wolf from Sitka. And I am a part of what's called the Eagle Nest House. And what I my Tlingit name is Chaaksik, which means eagle daughter. And I would just like to start by acknowledging that right now I'm on the ancestral homeland of the Nooksack, Lummi, and other Coast Salish people who've been its stewards since time immemorial, respecting the land and rivers and ocean, with an understanding that everything is connected, related, and alive. And what I have done in the past is I have been, and I still am, a writer and a filmmaker. I started my spiritual journey a very long time ago. And one of the aspects of that was traveling from Siberia to Patagonia to interview grandmothers for a project that I did at the inspiration of my elder, who used to always talk about there won't be peace on earth until the voices of the grandmothers are heard. And after he passed away, I wanted to know, well, what is it that the grandmothers have to offer for peace? So I set out on that north-south journey, that head to the heart journey, which in many places is called the Good Red Road, which is the journey from the head to the heart, or the journey, the spirit journey. And I interviewed grandmothers from Siberia to Patagonia for a project called Women's Voices, the Wisdom of the Grandmothers. And after I did the book, I realized, well, number one, I hadn't made it all the way to Patagonia. I hadn't made it all the way to the farthest south place. But I also realized that it was so much more powerful, even though the stories were powerful, it was so much more powerful to hear the women in their own voices. And I had interviewed them on film just for my own way to capture their stories. And so I set out to finish the journey and allow for making of a documentary film. And when I started, I didn't even know how to turn on a camera. I went with two other women from Siberia, and we bought a camera at Best Buy, and we had no idea how to turn it on.
Perfect.
We loved a documentary film nonetheless, and it ended up through the grace of the creator and the help of a lot of amazing people who came forward, being on PBS stations around the country. And it's currently on YouTube and on my website for free. And from that journey and from that documentary, I moved forward into a number of amazing connections that I've been able to meet and to foster the work of the grandmothers around the country. And I also do other things. I've written a couple of other books, and I love supporting, I guess my heart passion is supporting other people on their own spiritual journey, whatever that looks like.
Beautiful.
Amazing. I love this journey that you went on to bring the voice of the grandmothers out. So you mentioned it's on your website. Is that the website that's right? Did I get it right? That's right there?
I don't see
Flyingwithwings.com.
Flyingwithwings.
Yeah, actually, that's a whole nother part of my what do I do?
Beautiful.
If you go to well, this is a book that I wrote about an aircraft accident that happened in Alaska, and it talks about the journey that after the accident, what the company went through. But more about the rest of my work is on womensvoicesproject.com, and that's where they can find the film and interviews with the grandmothers and other work that I'm doing on Indigenous prophecy. But thank you for promoting the book.
That is wonderful.
And you'll find the other links below in the description. So the Women's Voices Project is down there as well, and I'll put it here in the comments for you.
Thank you.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a few people that have joined us. So we have Jonathan from Hawaii.
Hello.
Hello, Jonathan. And we have Mark. Hey, Mark. How's it going? Ethnicity. I'm trying very hard to remain neutral and surrender to the most benevolent outcomes. We live in such polarizing times. I'm exhausted from being between people of different beliefs. Yeah.
That's a really, really important comment, because I remember I was just talking to some younger women about this morning. When I was younger, I remember saying to my elders, I feel like I have a foot in both worlds, like one in this world and one in the spiritual world. And I feel like I'm being stretched. Those worlds are getting farther and farther apart, and I can't, I'm so stretched, I can't be in both. And I was told, well, there's going to be a time, and I think we're in that time now, when we're all going to have to make a choice. And the choice is, are we going to jump into this spiritual world with both hands and both feet and climb our way into that world? Or are we going to let go and kind of fall into this material world? And of course, we're in all of them all the time at the same time.
Mhm.
That the choice that we're being called to make in this time is to walk the spiritual path with practical feet. We have to really make that choice to be tuning in. And I think that when you get down to the real essence of all beliefs, they all say the same thing. There's just different wordings, different ways of going about expressing it or explaining it. But all the gurus and all the spiritual leaders and all the messengers, they're all giving us that same message, which is
Mhm.
tune into the Creator and love Mother Earth and love each other. And it
Mhm.
gets even simpler than that. And I think it goes down to just love and respect. And if we can do those things, it seems like as I get older and I'm into my 70s, the rest of it just becomes less important or less stressful.
It's true. And we have Janice. Hey, Janice.
Hello, Janice.
Welcome. And Mark is like, yes, all about the spiritual world. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We were just talking about that this week, weren't we, Jen? About how we're sort of in a couple of different dimensions all at the same time, and it's becoming more almost integrated for us. And so what you're saying about the spiritual journey, it totally makes sense. What I'm experiencing anyway. So
yeah. Most definitely. It's in my head because we just had it. So I just did the first live for the Love of Mystics, and I had a couple wonderful guests on. So if you want to check that out, I can tell you about it later. But one of the things that Melissa Sophia Joy had said is she used a term, and it was incension. Right. So we talk so much about ascension and all of this idea of, transcending and all of that kind of stuff. But this idea of incension, where we're really going in and we're allowing ourselves to change and we evolve in this process. And it is a way of helping us to be able to bring that divine into our experience, as opposed to trying to get out of the experience. Right. And so it's a very different way of explaining that process by using that word, right? I'm incension and being able to, say, yeah, we are walking in both, because there is a part of us that will and is always in the oneness. And that is just who we truly are. And yet we come here to have an experience that's differentiated. And so we need to be able to have that experience. That's why we're here. So how do we do that in the midst of all of the turmoil and the different beliefs and all of the fighting and all of that? We do that, as you said, right? Talking about this ability to really walk that spiritual path. But can we do that and allow ourselves to really step into it right here, right now?
Mm-hmm. And that's really all we have, is right here, right now. And so I think that's a really good word. And I think, in a lot of the Indigenous spirituality and Indigenous teachings of people that I've been blessed enough to interview and get to know, there's not this desire to always be ascending. That's very Western. There's this walking softly on the earth, being connected with our Mother Earth, respecting our mother. And I think that that's a piece of that path that often in Western dialect gets missed, because we do need that staying close.
Most definitely. Yeah, and that connectedness to Earth. I mean, you talk to most people about where do you feel the most grounded? Where do you feel the most connected? Where do you feel the most calm? And so often it's in nature, right? Whether it's sitting by the water or going for a walk in the woods or just digging your feet in the sand, whatever it is for you, there is a component of when I am in that space and connected to that energy, I feel whole.
Yeah, definitely. So, question to everybody out there. When do you feel most whole? When do you give yourself the chance to go inward?
And Jonathan made a really great comment about going inward, right? We need to go inwards to find the divine. It's how my guided meditations work, by taking people inwards to find their inner temple and connect with their spirit guides and higher self. Yeah, beautiful, Jonathan.
Definitely. That's awesome. You'll notice that I posted 2 links in the chat there. The first one is like an intro thingy. The second one is the full show of For the Love of Mystics. So
thank you, Tanis.
welcome.
Yeah, Kaylee said, when I'm by the ocean in water. I love the water too.
Yeah, me too. Mark says in the woods.
Yeah.
Melanie says salt bath, deepest meditation.
Yeah.
Janice says, if we can take the idea of living in the moment and live in that philosophy, life can then be a little more centered to deal with our lives. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I wanted to say something that comment on something Jennifer said earlier about, fear, not going to fear. I remember one of the grandmothers I interviewed said, when you go into fear, you lose all your gifts. And I think that what's happening in our world right now is that political forces and external forces are doing everything they can to get us to feel separate and feel fear. And neither one of those things are the truth. We're one. And so this idea of separating everyone and pushing them to fear is just to distract us from our power that we really have to come together. And, we're powerful, as is, so many said by poets and mystics, we're powerful beyond our wildest beliefs.
Yeah.
And we have the power when we're united to change the world. And then that first piece of that is unity within our own selves. As you mentioned earlier, the unity between the light and the dark within ourselves that we have to come to understand and not feel like we have to run away from it, or change it or get rid of it or excise it or whatever the things are so often from the patriarchy. It's understanding and accepting that this is part of who we are, and we can keep the shadow in balance. We're in control. It's there, but it doesn't have to run the show. It doesn't have to drive the bus.
Yes. I love that. It does not have to drive the bus.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and 2 of my favorite, I love Rumi, so I have Rumi quotes all the time, but everything in the universe is within you, and you are the universe in ecstatic motion, right? So to what you were saying about the mystics and all of that, and what they share, that idea that, we are all We are one. We are part of that, right? We forget that when we come in to the world.
And I think that's where being in nature and being in water, what are we, 80%? I never remember the statistics, but we're a bunch of water,
We are a bunch of water, and we're a bunch of water in a meat sack is what we are.
When we get into the water, we're like, okay, I'm connecting, to that energy of who I am in this body, but also when we're in nature, we're connecting to the energy of the divine, of the higher power of the creator. And that's such a gift to be able to do that. I read an article just the other day that said in many other countries, and they listed them all, doctors will prescribe like going out in nature or going and being in water. They see that as a way of healing and helping people to reset. Whereas, in our culture, it's somebody's going to give you a pill if you have anxiety. But, you can't just find these other ways of remembering, putting ourselves back together by being connected with the world around us and with our spirit. So.
Definitely.
To what you're saying, there's actually a program, and I think it originated in BC. I'd have to go back and look. But I'm a member of them. That's how I know about them. And it's parks, and it's a prescription for nature. And so you can actually give a prescription to be able to go into national parks. And if you get the prescription, you get to go into a whole ton of parks, museums, all kinds of things for free with the prescription. And it is that whole idea of we have to get back into nature. We have to get reconnected with the elements around us so that we can feel whole again.
And that also includes people. One of the things that I think happened for a lot of us during COVID is we became so separate, and we forgot that, connecting with other humans, sometimes they're pain, but more often than not, connecting with other humans and animals can be just a way for us to reconnect to the divine within ourselves, because I can see it in you when I can't necessarily see it in myself.
Yeah.
Very true. We've got a lot of great comments going on.
We do. So this one here, we all have part of nature inside us, and the inner temple is inside our inner forest. Sometimes it's on the shore of our inner sea.
Love
Beautiful. That. And he also says that every time he feels off balance, he needs to throw himself in the ocean. And
nice.
Anger is another face of fear as well. It comes from feeling disconnected.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're talking about the water, Nalani says we can live without a lot of things. Water is not one of them.
Truth.
Yeah. And that's why I love our community so much. Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yeah, definitely.
It's all about walking each other home, right? But that one, that's awesome. Yeah. And Mark was wondering if you could repeat the title of the book, please. The grandmother book.
The book is called Women's Voices, The Wisdom of the Grandmothers. And the film is called The Wisdom of the Grandmothers. You have to put the in it. And it's on YouTube. It's on the Women's Voices Project.com website. And it was just such a gift to be able to ask, these older women, what's important to you at the end of life? I started it when I was 55. And so I was sort of in that middle, getting up there. But, looking back 20 years, it's like, what is it that matters to you as you look back on your life? And what are the things that you might have believed when you were younger that now that you're an elder, you no longer believe to be true? And that got a lot of really interesting comments, that question.
I bet.
Because I think people do look back on their lives. And I know myself, when I was in the doing stage of life, when I thought that it was so important to have a big job or whatever I did, and title and house. And I live in a one-room cabin now, and I think back, God, I thought it was so important to have that house and all those things that just, I look back and think, what was I thinking? Why was that important? When in reality, you don't take any of that with you. And I think some of the challenges that people have been facing, the horrible, when it's forced on you, with the fires and the floods and the losses that they're experiencing, it's terrible for them. The end of it is, it's reminding us, and every person you hear interviewed after, they say, well, I got out with my family, or my pets and my family got out, and they're sort of standing there, maybe realizing that so much of the material things they've lost, but what really matters is the lives of the people that they love. And I wish we could learn that without having to go through the loss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true.
Thank you for asking about the book and the film. I appreciate it.
And he says thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mark.
Yeah.
And Shem is here to say hello. Hey, Shem.
Hi.
Yeah. It's true, though. I mean, we go through all of these experiences, and, the mind, we talk about this, on the show often, but the mind labels it good, bad, right, wrong. This is what I want. This is what I don't want. And yet it's not until we're through the experience that we truly understand its purpose. And if we're at a place where we still go, I don't understand it, we're not through it.
Yeah,
The
that's
clarity comes.
of age, as you get to look back and see it from another perspective. And I remember some of the elders saying, when you go up a mountain, you don't go straight up. I mean, some people do, but you don't climb straight up. You kind of go around. And a lot of times when you're going around, you might be looking out at the same vista, but you're looking at it from a very different perspective. You're looking at it from a different place in your own journey. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, we talked not long ago about the spiral dynamics of energy and how that plays out in life, and that would definitely be one way of looking at that. Yeah. What Mark says here. Sometimes just when you think you've understood something, you find another way to look at it.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it brings you a different understanding.
And isn't that what we're being challenged to do now? You mentioned earlier, I think it was before we were on camera, but these funds are like sand, they're shifting.
Oh, yeah.
And we, in this shifting times, I believe that there's a purpose to what we're all doing and why we're having these conversations. And I think the purpose is because we really are being asked to build something new on a solid foundation. And that's part of, my spiritual practice and my spiritual belief is like, we have a new world, a unified world, a world where we're all coming together, and we get to build that. And it helps to understand that when you're going through the difficult times that, don't give up, because we're just building something that's never been built before. And that's
true.
Coming together of all the people on this planet, and even having a planetary view of things. It's been in my lifetime that there was the first picture of the Earth from space. I remember how exciting that was. And so just having that planetary view of who we are as human beings, I think is a gift of the time we're living in.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
That's something I've said for decades now. Life is a spiral, and we circle back to things we think we've mastered, only to learn we still have a lot to learn.
Absolutely.
We don't know what we don't know, right? That's the whole thing.
Capital T.
To quote Shrek, I'm an onion.
Exactly. You get to peel away the layers.
Peeling away all the layers of this junk to get down to the core, and and then finding maybe it's open.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and it's such a beautiful thing too. I mean, we say so often open and curious, and the ability to be open and curious allows us to recognize that we don't know, right? That all of these things that we think we know, that we hold space for, that we get so caught up in, this is just how it is, right? And the moment that we go, okay, maybe that's not true. Just because my mind is telling me doesn't mean it's true. Yes, layers and tears.
Yes, exactly.
But it allows for a new possibility. And that's it. As long as we can open to a new possibility, anything can come in. Right? It doesn't have to be the same pattern. And I think, when we talk about that spiral, it's a beautiful thing because it's not a circle. We don't have to do the same thing over and over and over again. Every time we circle back to that issue, we go, oh, I get a choice. I get a chance to do something different. Okay, I'm going to do that. And then along we go. Get back to, oh, I get a choice again. Right? I can do the same thing. I can do something different. Right? And it's just this beautiful unfolding that can happen because we continually get more opportunities, right? To try being open and curious and doing something different and seeing how that unfolds.
That's so important. I was asked to speak at a conference about the airline accident, and there's been a lot of accidents lately, and I found myself being, I don't know, activated. Again, I don't like the word triggered, but a lot of people that, were in positions of political power or whatever, people were talking about, well, we have to have conversations. We have to have conversations. Well, I'm all for conversations. I'm a writer. I'm a communicator. But I found that word just activating me. And I thought, what is going on here? And I realized, we've been having these conversations for 40 years. We know what we need to do. We really do know a lot of the things we need to do. What about if we just do an action and see how it goes and then evaluate it? Okay, let's try something and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't work. But if we this idea of just being afraid to take that step into action and then evaluation and reflecting on it. And I think sometimes we do that in our own lives. We can get so caught up in that world of just going around and around, and it once you step out of it, there's a freedom that comes with that, that is so wonderful. I just wish younger women, that's my passion, my goal. I wish people could learn it younger, or I wish I could learn it younger. You guys are so wise, you're learning it younger and you're able to get out of that mode of fear of trying and failing, or trying something and seeing, wow, this is really incredible. Somebody's walked this path before me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and that fear of failure can be debilitating for people. Luckily, I have a line 3. I bump into things all the time, and I'm okay with that.
She's referring to her human design, folks. She has a line 3.
Because experimentation is a part of that, but some people that are very adverse to that. And so if there is a fear there, being able to honor that and go, okay, I recognize that right now I am holding this fear and this fear is keeping me debilitated. Okay, I'm going to honor that for a moment. If I need to cradle that for a little bit and just give it some love, I will.
Yeah.
Okay. And then it's like, okay, now I need to do something different.
Yeah, I'm going to take a step anyway and step into the unknown. I remember before I started the Women's Voice Project, I had a dream, and I don't know if you've ever been to Juneau, Alaska, but it's on Gastineau Channel, and one side of the channel is Juneau, and the other side of the channel is Douglas Island, and there's a bridge that goes across. But I was I don't know if you're old enough to remember 45 record players. Remember those old record players? You put it on a spindle. And I was standing on one of those records that was going around, and I was jumping up and down, and I was saying in the dream to everyone, "Don't you know we're on a record?" And the more I jumped up and down and yelled, "Don't you know we're on a record?" the faster it spun. So it went from like 45 to 72, and it kept going faster and faster. And I'm jumping up and down. And the next thing I knew, I got thrown off, and I'm on the other side of Gastineau Channel, and I'm looking back, and I'm thinking, well, do I go back there and tell all the people they're jumping up and down on the record? And then the thought came to me, turn around. So I turned around in the dream, and I realized that there was a path going up the mountain, and that along the path people had left markers. And I thought, oh, people have walked this path before. They've left me markers. And so I started walking on that path, and I woke up. And that was a really profound dream for me in my life of realizing that, I can't change the people that are jumping up and down because I'm just driving everybody crazy and myself. But two, that other people have walked the path less traveled, and they have left us markers. So we're not alone on that. We can take that step and, do the journey, face the fears, face the unknown. And there's the last thing I just had written down that I wanted to share was one of the things that the grandmothers talk about a lot in our circles that I'm a part of. What are the things from the past that need to be brought forward? So there are many things in every tradition that are really important, foundational. And it's like if you've ever seen people weave on a loom, those foundational values are the warp threads, things like love, respect, honoring the earth, community. Those are the warp threads that goes up and down. But the weft threads, the ones that weave the design of the blanket, those we don't know what that picture is going to look like. And so we're having to weave something that's never been woven before, and recognize that, that's the job of today is let's have those foundational values, but let's weave the picture differently so that we don't end up making the same mistakes that have been made for the last few hundred years when people were maybe doing the best they can, but believing in a system that we now know doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I got to say, going back for a moment just to the dream that you shared, as you were sharing that, like every part of me was just tingling away, going that.
Yeah. Yeah, very profound, that one, for sure.
And it's beautiful too, because it aligns even with what you're talking about building this beautiful like tapestry, right? That weaving together, because if we are just spinning around and spinning and spinning and spinning, we're not bringing anything new, but we're also not recognizing what currently needs to change. Right? And that path, like you said, with the markers, I just love that. And in light of what you were sharing about, older traditions, things that we've forgotten that we need to bring back in, there are, some of those markers on that path are exactly that. Mm-hmm. And if we are willing to be open to seeing them and then trying to go down that road, even if we know that it's going to be difficult and we know not everybody's going to want to journey it. But if we do, and we can shine that light and be part of those markers, then we can hold space for others to do the same and bring back.
Absolutely. One of the grandmothers in our circle shared a prayer with me. And it's actually a poem. Would it be all right if I read it? It isn't very
Please.
long.
Yeah, please.
A woman by the name of Aurora Levins Morales. And I find it to be so profoundly tingly, like, and it's called Prayer Calling the Grandmothers. And it starts out, last night I dreamed 10,000 grandmothers from 1,200 corners of the earth walked out into the gap, one breath deep, between the bullet and the flesh, between the bomb and the family. They told me, we cannot wait for governments. There are no peacekeepers boarding planes. There are no leaders who dare to say every life is precious. So it will have to be us. They said, we will cup our hands around each heart. We will sing the earth song, the song of water, a song so beautiful that vengeance will turn to weeping. The mourners will embrace, and grief replace every impulse toward harm. 10,000 is not enough, they said. So we have sent this dream like a flock of doves into the sleep of the world. Wake up, put on your shoes. You who are reading this, I'm bringing bandages and a bag of scented guavas from my trees. I think I remember the tune. Meet me at the corner. Let's go.
Beautiful.
That.
Oh,
I know, I need to take a moment.
that's beautiful.
It makes me cry. Aurora Levins Morales, what a beautiful dream and what a beautiful poem. Meet me at the corner. I'll bring whatever you got. It's good enough.
Yeah. But that whole idea of being, embodying for ourselves all of those things that we know we're not going to necessarily find in governments or those that have power, or those that have, who we think have power, right? And yet, if each one of us were to embrace that is powerful, right? And that's way more powerful than a position.
What was the name of the poem, please? I'm going to put it in the chat so that people have it.
Prayers Calling the Grandmother.
Prayers Calling the Grandmothers or Grandmother?
Grandmothers, I believe. But Aurora, like Aurora spelled, and then Levins, and last name Morales. Morales. I just think it's so beautiful because it's such a profound dream of bringing together.
There we go.
It's on us. That's really what Twillow Talk and all the beautiful things that you guys share, and all the Beyond Being Human and the mystics and the religions and my own and others, and what. Let's do it. Let's not be distracted by the sand. Let's find the foundation.
Beautiful.
Oh, Mark said she's got an Instagram
She's
page.
got an Insta page.
Awesome. Thank you.
Beautiful. Yeah, there's so much happening. I think when we were talking about the sand, it was like we can't build sand castles because the sand keeps shifting and sifting. So we just have to play with the sand at the moment. I think that was what came through.
Like that.
Yeah.
And I'd be curious to know if maybe some of those things, to look back on, because I think about it even now, the other way is, when I look back, how do I want to think about this moment? How do I want to be able to remember it? And so much of what is important to me is, was I loving? Did I have fun? Right? Did I hold space? Did I allow for things to unfold? And so when we look at it from that perspective, right, no matter where we are in our journey, right, at this very moment, when I look back on it, how do I want to perceive it? How do I want to think about it? What do I want it to be? What's going to allow me to look back and go, yeah, that was a good moment. Even if it was a hard moment, even if it was a difficult moment.
Yeah.
Right? What's going to allow me to look at it and go, yeah, it was good.
But, and that introspection thing is something, right, that we talked about at the beginning of the show, going inward and doing the introspection about things that have happened helps to inform our future decisions, right? If it wasn't quite what we'd love it to be, or we didn't perhaps respond in the way we would love to have responded, how can we change that? How can we view things from a different angle on that mountain, a different part of the spiral, to create a different perception when we look back? I think those are great questions, you know?
And not beating ourselves up in those moments.
Yes,
Go,
exactly.
oh, I could have done that differently. Yeah, okay, I could have. And when I spiral back to it and it shows up again in my reality, I'm going to do something different.
Exactly. Exactly. Like you said, we always have a choice when it comes up again, right? We can always do something different. And I often do with my clients the root cause analysis. I'm an HR consultant too, so that whole business thing, I bring it into my client stuff, and I ask them 5 whys. So when they're triggered about how they responded, okay, well, why does it matter? Why does that matter? 5 whys. Why does it matter? Because it helps us to really identify where that came from in terms of our experiences, our previous experiences, perhaps, you know, even past life energies coming forward. Where did that come from for you? And just allows them to do that introspection a little bit more, to perhaps make a different choice if they want to, right? We have free will.
So important. I think that's real. I'm going to remember the 5 whys, even with children and grandchildren. You know, well, why? You know, why did you do that? Why did you hit your brother?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and there's always a deeper cause. I have often found that it goes to a root fear. You know, we were talking about fear earlier. It goes down to a root fear. Often, I use the example of getting stuck in traffic. Well, why does it matter if you're stuck in traffic? Well, because I'm going to be late. Well, why does that matter? Well, the people at the other end will be upset with me. Why does that matter? Well, they won't want to be my friend. Why does that matter? Well, I don't want to not have any friends. So it gets to a root cause of abandonment, right? And so where do we focus our attention then? How do we move forward from some of those things that have happened, and how can we change how we view them, to create a better path forward in those situations? So it helps to give insight. It's funny. People don't realize, you know, they don't think to ask themselves why often. I was having a discussion with somebody not a couple of days ago, and it was all about politics, and he was getting feisty. And I was like,
Feisty's a fun word.
I like it. It was a great conversation. He's awesome. And I said, so why are you triggered? Why is this upsetting you? And he's like, I don't think I've ever asked myself that. I'm like, You're welcome. So
insight, like
yes,
looking in, like that's just, you know, so that's great. That's really profound, Hannah.
it's great to ask those questions. And I don't think, you know, it's about reminding people in conversation. It doesn't have to be in a session, you know, like I do it in my sessions, but this was just a conversation. And I thought, okay, just ask. And I also always ask without expectation of a response, because people don't always know. You know, it's okay if you don't know, but asking the question helps you to think about that. I do that for me too. Like, why am I so upset about this? Because, you know, we're all human. We do our stuff. Yeah, I get feisty. I do like that word, feisty.
It's a great word. And I love, you know, the component of that where and it's 5 whys, but I've had experiences where it's like, okay, we need to bring it home. Why does that matter to you?
Yeah.
Right? What is that bringing up for you? Why does that matter? Right?
That's
to
right.
really get into the depth of the fear that's coming up, or right, even if it's discord, you said about hitting.
Yeah.
Why'd you do that? Well, he hit me first. Okay. If you say, why does that matter? They're going to be like, well, because they hit me.
Yes.
Right. But being able to really bring it back and go, okay, why does that matter, in the sense of like, what does that say about you? What do you think that means about you? Right. Being able to really dive into and bring that home is such a beautiful thing. And I love it whenever Tanis brings up the 5 whys, because it is such a beautiful component of really recognizing, what we can do differently. Right. Even again, the record in your dream, just spinning and spinning and spinning. Right. If we just stopped for a moment and went, why am I on this thing?
Why does it matter that I'm doing this?
Not fun. I am dizzy. I think that was it. Pogo said earlier. That sense of like being dizzy in these times, or being stretched in these times. It's like having to come to our own whys. Like, why am I here? Because I cannot influence what is happening. I can influence a lot of things through prayer, through energetic, all the things that you're mentioning. I can do those things. And there are some things that are going to have to play out. And I think that's where, for me, where some of the Indigenous prophecies have been so helpful, because, and religious prophecies, Christianity talks about building the kingdom of God on earth. Baha'i faith talks about creating a new universal civilization. Buddhism talks about, all of them talk about this time in the future. And Indigenous prophecies also talk about the time when the hoop of many hoops will come together, black elk, or the 4 colors will come back together and be united. And we're living in that time, but everything that is falling apart and being shown to us as being untruth, the things that weren't built on a firm foundation, that weren't built on being on a spiritual foundation, are falling away. And we're having to ask ourselves, okay, I see it. I trust my inner voice of what I'm seeing. I see that it's collapsing. What can I do? What is my role in this time? How can I be a builder? How can I bring light out into the world? How can I bring love and not fear? And I ask myself those questions every day and every night, and a lot of times it's like, man, I really failed today, I was really grumpy at that lady, and it just made me stand in line for 45 minutes while she talked on the phone.
So that's when you ask yourself the 5 whys. Yeah, for sure. I mean, we all have those times, and being gentle with ourselves in these times, because we are already living in that uncertainty, and so we're much closer to being in that fight or flight on a regular basis, right? So that humanness comes out very much so.
Definitely.
So we've had our gracious 5-minute warning from one of our regulars. The last 5 minutes, we usually pick a card, so we give them some home play. We don't like calling it homework, but we call it home play for the week. So what have we got this week, Jen?
We are still using
Sacred
Feminine as our cards that we're using for this. And the card that I got today is Let Your Waters Flow.
And we were just talking about how beautiful water is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how important it is in our experience. So let me go ahead and find that in here. Okay, here we go. Hold that up for you. Okay, it's time to cry, dear one. All the grief and sorrow you have stored up wants to return to your sacred mother. You are not meant to hold on to things that cause you pain. They are meant to flow through you like water. As a baby, you had no blocks in your emotional body. You experienced an emotion and expressed it. It is time to return to that way of being. Let your mind cease its worry. Cry a deep, releasing cry. The salty waters will heal you, and Mother Earth will soothe you. Your tears are meant to return home to the ocean of life, for they are made of the same matter. You came here knowing you would forget your sacred lineage during your earth walk. Bathe in the sacred feminine waters and remember who you are. Your grief is honored and your tears are sacred. Let them flow. Great wisdom will be found on the other side of their release.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
I just
It
want to
sums
thank
up.
you both so much for inviting me to be here and to be a part of your community. And I just encourage people to take part in your Beyond Being Human support groups that you're doing, and just all the
Yours.
you're
And
doing.
yeah,
Well, you're just such an inspiration, and I just can't thank you enough for bringing me into your circle and letting me be a part of it. So I just want to express it from my heart.
we're
Thank you.
honored that you were here with us.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And talk about Beyond Being Human and the support groups. You do
Yes.
a support group too. So
You do.
share with our audience, because we're always telling them that they should check out all the support groups.
Yes. Exactly.
Well, we have one tomorrow, the 4th. We do it once a month, and I do it with Rachel, and we use the format that the Indigenous Grandmother Circle use, which we stress sacred listening and heart sharing. And sacred listening is listening to the other people as if the voice of the Creator were speaking. And heart sharing is sharing whatever is within our own hearts in a safe place. And we just encourage people to take part in all of the support groups because we're not alone. And so learning how to, even through Zoom, learning how to have these conversations with one another. So thank you. You guys are amazing.
There's a beautiful comment.
Everyone who's listening, Mark, City and living in radiance. I love it. And pogo. Yeah, you guys are amazing. Thank you.
Awesome. And Jacqueline, hey Jacqueline.
Hey,
Thank
Jack.
you. And blessings to all.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. So have you got anything else coming up, Susan, that you'd like to share?
Well, if people just go on to the Women's Voices Project.com. I've sort of combined, or flyingwithwings.com. Both of them have the different lives that I lead.
They're all down below.
Activities and I just encourage everyone to stay connected. Thank you for what you're doing with this Twillow Talk. What a great service that you're providing.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for all you do. What a beautiful project with the grandmothers. It's lovely. And we have Galactic Gab.
Yes.
On Friday.
Yes.
At 7:30. So please join us for that. And then we will be back here next Monday.
Yes. And as a note, I don't always have something on the go, but next Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, I'm on with Gerald again, and we're going to continue our conversation about environments. So if you're following that with the human design stuff, we will be continuing on and talking about the next set of environments. So you can join us for that as well before Twillow Talk next week.
Perfect. So, on that note, we thank you all for joining us as always and sharing your beautiful energy and love with us. And we share it back to all of you. And we thank you again, Susan, for joining us. It was such an honor having you here and sharing your wisdom. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Many blessings to all.